All right, so good morning to everyone. There's a way that we usually start and end things. Um, that's very usual in many of the cultures in the Indian subcontinent. There's a word called sadhu, sadhu. Yeah, it does not have a exact meaning. Like it's not hola, like in Spanish, but it means may you be well. It can mean multiple things, sadhu, and we usually do it this way, sadhu. And when someone says something, if you acknowledge that, you also say sadhu. And if you want to respect someone, you also say sadhu. Like you would respect your parents by saying sadhu, a monk or someone who's respect worthy, you would say sadhu. So there's this word called sadhu. So we usually, when we start, we do sadhu three times, and after we end meditation, we also do sadhu three times. I have some friends. They are sort of old people, old as in young at heart, but old in their physical bodies. They're also a little physically challenged and even mentally challenged. They come here for a beautiful meditation session. They don't understand a lot, but they do this wonderful drumming session. Our good friend Andy is hosting that, and I'm also helping myself with a little bit of simple meditation. And so now they have adopted saying sadhu at the end after the drumming session. Every time they meet on Wednesdays, they say sadhu three times, and they even went to making this ritual. They say sadhush, something like that. So, but the original term is sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So let me welcome you all to this wonderful lake monastery. Most of you have been here, some of you haven't been here, and some of you are missing out the beautiful weather because you're on Zoom. So this lake monastery is a beautiful place. This house was originally built in the 80s by this really benevolent lady called Mrs. Bernice Beale, the Beale family. Why I say benevolent, when she was passing away, at her last will, she made it. She bought the entire property, including the lake, which is a 80-acre lake, which has a lot of snapping turtles, beavers, tundra swans, you name it. There's a lot of fauna and flora and animals who needs protection. When we moved in here, it wasn't so congested, but now you see all the new neighborhoods are coming up around, and this is sort of the only remaining place in this area where the developers can't get in. People need houses, but animals need to live too. So when she passed away, she made a easement agreement so that only a not-for-profit could own, and they have to protect the land, which was really nice. I mean, she could have sold it for millions. So thanks to her, we have this wonderful place which got converted to a meditation place, a monastery, and a lot of people are benefiting through that. So we need to thank her for all this beauty. So she protected that. So Mrs. Bernice Beale. And we also have to acknowledge that we are in the traditional territories of Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee people, the people that who have lived here, and the people that names we do not know, that we do not remember. 10,000, 20,000 years ago, there's Paleolithic, there's so much history here, everywhere. I learned that T-Rex lived in Canada. T-Rex. So we should remember all these beautiful souls who have traveled through the earth, and we are also traveling through the earth. So because of the same reason, this monastery is a communal property. There's no one real owner to this. I'm not the owner of this place. I'm just passing through like the beavers, right? So are you. So everyone here is not an owner, but also an owner. So everyone is helping each other, taking care of everything. Pretty much people who gather here, they voluntarily support everything which happens here. So it's a communal property, and it's beautiful that way. We have 4 resident monks who are living up there. You met most of them, you know most of them. And there's this one thing one of our friends mentioned. If you see that under the seats and in the corners, if it's a little unclean, we have a problem with vacuum cleaning because the monks do not have attachments. we don't have the attachments for the vacuum. Anyway, okay. So, so jokes aside, we also had some not so cool incident in the last few months. So make sure to hold on to your personal belongings when you're here. This used to be like a very free, open space. We never closed our doors a few months back, like a couple of years back. But now things have changed. There's different dynamics. So that's there. So this is about Lake Monastery, and you will get to see much more of the property. Certain places are off limits because the lake could be a little dangerous at times. There's a lot of conservation work going on. There's new moth species being bred to eat invasive species. There's a big fight against this buckthorn, which is an invasive species. A lot of volunteers, kids, little children are helping with that. Some of our neighbors are very much into that. So there's a lot of good work going on here. And so now, most of you have met the monk who's here, but my name is Kalubovila Ananda. And it's also, I often get called as Sadhu. When little children call me, they call me Sadhu. Sadhu is a common name to talk to a monk. There's also a term called Bhante, which was used for Buddha also, Bhante. But in the Western world, we are considered as clergymen. So Rev Ananda, sometimes I go like that. But I also go as Amanda sometimes. And that's because of autocorrect. I get messages every day because on autocorrect, they don't recognize Ananda, they recognize Amanda. So I'm not Amanda. So I became a monk about 7 years ago in 2018. In fact, I'll show you some photos. Before I became a monk, I had a different life trajectory, but I would say I wasn't a very good boy. I wasn't the most disciplined and well-behaved person. I even used to call myself an outstanding student because I was never in the class. So I studied different things in life and did a few things. And finally, in 2018, I ended up as a monk. So this is before me when I had hair. So I was born with hair. I shaved. The monks shave because it's part of the tradition. And so I don't know if you recognize see Bante Chandaloka here. So this is him. This was in Sri Lanka. That's where I'm originally from. So the process is that when you get ordained, you have to stay in the temple for some time. Learning the traditions. So that's the period where I was wearing the white and I looked like a bishop at one point. That's during the ceremony. And then I became a monk. So the good thing is that right after you become a monk, you get a lot of free time. It's like an unlimited retreat time, unlimited retreat time. So before I became a monk, I used to do a lot of meditation. Again, meditation can have many forms, but I used to go to these 14-day meditation courses, done like maybe 10 of them. So I spent some time there. But then after you become a monk, I was sent to this cave in a remote jungle in Sri Lanka, where there was no electricity, completely off-grid, no phones. I had to give up my phone, I think, at the point. And it's so beautiful there. You are inside the jungle, completely surrounded by wild elephants. There's sometimes bear and all that, but they are very nice. Animals are really nice compared to a lot of human. We had to share the cave with a green pit viper, which is supposed to be a little venomous, but he never did anything to us. He was very gentle snake. But the good thing is that when you're in that isolation for 3 months, first thing is that you can sleep unlimited. You can sleep without having to wake up. You don't have alarms because there's no internet or no phone, no work, so you could sleep. And then you can gain a lot of perspective, looking at the jungle, looking at yourself. So that, and before I came to Canada in 2021, I met Jason at one point online. But before I came to Canada, I was in this very beautiful area also called Singharaja Forest. It's a primary forest which means which was never been touched by human souls. So one of the aspects of being a monk has to do with this being in the vicinity of a calmer place, a jungle, a secluded place, a quieter place. So that's one part of the monk's tradition, especially the Theravada tradition. Now I'll talk to you about what is which is which and what traditions do we have. Um, yeah, so that was about it. And then, as per the course outline, what we are going to do over the next few days. Today will be an introduction to Buddhism, and then from tomorrow, from the next 2 weeks, we are going to look at the nature of mind. I will also send you an email of a summary of this, what I'm presenting today, so that you can take notes, but you can also, like me, I would never take notes. I'm very bad at that. So that, and then we are going to look at a few things which are very useful in our day-to-day life: disappointment, and how do we deal with uncertainty, anger and fear, etc. And then we'll look into a little philosophical or maybe a little academical, but not too much, but more in a relatable manner. Some of the core teachings of Theravada Buddhism, called the Four Noble Truths, Three Marks of Existence, the five aggregates. But don't worry about all these numbers. It might look complicated, but we'll learn it in a very simple manner. There's a lot of numbers, 8 of this, 7 of that. There's a lot of numbers in Theravada Buddhism. 5 aggregates, 3 marks of existence, 4 noble truths, and the 8-fold noble path at the end. And then we are going to finish all that with mindfulness. Yesterday we went somewhere, and then I told them, it just occurred to me, it's a wrong word to use mindfulness. My point here is to not fill your mind with data. Your mind is already filled with data, and that's not my objective here. I actually want to empty your mind. So maybe I need to strike it down and say mind emptiness on the last day, not mindfulness, right? So that's what we'll do. And as per the format, we are going to have Zoom and in person. I find both to be nice. Zoom because of our restrictions, but I always like to see people in person. It gives that personal feeling, and you could see the people and their reactions and what they would like to know. So on Zoom, I can't look at everyone, all your beautiful faces. So that's about it. And the presentation would go for about 35 minutes. Maybe not today. Today I'll take a little longer. And we'll have about 15 minutes for a Q&A. But you are always welcome to stay a little longer. Usually after our meditation, people leave at 10 after the meditation. They spend a good amount of time talking, because there's a lot of questions and answers that we need. And we'll also try to incorporate a small, brief meditation, right? That would be at the end. So that's as per the program. Then let's get to the introduction of Buddhism today. So, which Buddhism, right? Because there's a lot of denominations, there's a lot of teachings, there's a lot of different geographical areas where Buddhism is studied. So we need to understand which Buddhism are we going to sort of learn, or which Buddhism that we are going to discuss here. I'm not going to talk about which Buddhism is the best, because every religion, there's about 4,700 religions roughly in the world. There's a lot more. Everyone says my theory is the most correct theory. So it applies to all forms of Buddhism also. People would usually say my Buddhism is the most accurate Buddhism, especially the Theravada monks, because Theravada means the oldest tradition. So we say that usually. But let's look at the differences and the different nuances of Buddhism. They all have their nuances. But we probably don't need to go into a lot of detail, but it's good to have a working understanding of what's what. So when certain things come up. Buddha is also known as Siddhartha Gautama. That was his name when he was a layperson. Like me, when I showed my photo, I had a different name. My name was Aki, Akila. But now I had to adopt a new name as Ananda. So that's an adopted name after I became a monk, my ordained name. So the same way Buddha during his life, um, he did his spiritual seeking from the age 29 to 35, and during that period he became an ascetic. He joined the tradition of ascetics. I will talk to you about who is an ascetic and all that later. But he was known as Siddhartha. That was his lay name. And then in different countries, we call Buddha different names. For example, Sakyamuni is a famous name you would find in China, Vietnam. Vietnam? Sakyamuni is a common name. Buddha is the common name, so I highlighted it, Buddha. But then Buddha also has a few other names, Tathagata. They all have different meanings. Bhagava. If there's someone from India, you would identify that in Indian gods and deities are also called Bhagavan. Bhagavan Swami Vivekananda. Like a spiritual leader is called Bhagavan. So Bhagava is a version of that. People also call Buddha Bhante. Bhante. Some people call me Bhante Ananda. So that's sort of a honorific you add, like Mr. Ananda, Bhante Ananda for a spiritual leader. There's also a name Jina. Jina means who knows everything, who has conquered everything, Jina. But you will also find some other important spiritual leaders who have been called Jina. So let's get to that. But Buddha is the common name. And what does Buddha mean? Buddha means the one who has figured it out, the one who has awakened himself. So what does that mean? Are you not awake? We had coffee. The coffee machine is still not up, but are you awake? Why do we call Buddha awake? Is he not sleeping? So let's get to that word. What does that mean when we say woken, awakened, enlightened? What does that entail to? Let's also look into that later. Buddha, the Buddh, the etymological root, Buddh means to be awakened, to have an insight. Insight, you will also find insight meditation. Vipassana meditation is sometimes known as insight meditation. Who has seen? So that's Buddha. But then there's the question, there's so many versions of Buddha. What is the nature of Buddha? Buddha has a lot of faces. In each country, there's a different version of Buddha. Which Buddha is the most correct Buddha? We would not be able to answer that question because the first statue of Buddha was created during Gandhara period, which is the modern day Afghanistan, during a king called Kushan. King Kushan's period, there was a lot of influence from the Greco-Roman empires. Alexander the Great, he sent some people there. There was a lot of invasions. He passed the Persian stretch. He came all the way up to the Indian plateau, the Ganges. And as a result of that cultural mixing, the Buddhism got the statue creation. And if you look at the more early versions of Buddha, this is the Gandhara Buddha. He's the first sort of created Buddha after about 400 years of Buddha's passing away. So no one has really seen Buddha, but they have depicted Buddha in a way so that Buddha's compassion, Buddha's enlightenment is in that symbolic statue we see. In fact, a lot of people in the West, they have Buddha in their, in their gardens. I believe that people believe that Buddha represents the calmness, the kindness, and the imperturbability. How do we not get upset by things? How do we accept things? So that's why probably people have statues of Buddha. So it's very customary in monasteries we have Buddhas, a statue of Buddha. So this session, I'm not going to delve a lot into the life of Buddha, what Buddha's life is about, because traditionally, growing up in my country, it's a very Buddhist country like Thailand, I learned a lot of life of Buddha. But if you look at certain other philosophers like Pythagoras or Euclid, have you done geometry in your life? If you don't want to go there for years. There's this person called Euclid, Euclidean geometry. He has figured out very simple things, but very profound. For example, if I'm here, if I have to turn my head around, I can call it I turn my head around 360 degrees. Basically, the amount of turning I do until I get back to the original place, I could divide it into 360 small parts. Euclid found that if you draw any triangle, the summation of the angles of this triangle is going to be 180, right? That's a wonderful discovery. I don't know if you have ever used that except in the mathematics paper, but engineering is predominantly, I mean, it's pretty much based on this very simple, taking note of this very simple phenomena. If you draw any triangle, regardless of its shape, regardless of its size, the internal angles are going to add up to 180 degrees from here to right opposite side of me. So we know Euclid's theory, we know Pythagoras' theory, but we do not know about their life. Who was he married to? Who was his father? What did he do? Now, when a spiritual leader becomes a spiritual leader, not usually during their lifetime, usually after about 300 years of their lifetime, like Jesus, Prophet Muhammad even, and Buddha, there are a lot of trailing stories about how they lived, who's related to him. People want to have some sort of a relation. I'm coming from Buddha. There's a connection to Jesus, connection to Abraham. People like that, so they create a lot of stories around these religious characters, important characters. Unfortunately, no one claims I'm Euclid's grandson or Pythagoras' grandson, so we don't find that stories. But because of these stories, sometimes the philosophy gets lost in the way. We learn a lot of personal character, what Jesus did, what Buddha did, where did he go. Of course, there's a lot of learning through that, but we also sort of do not see the core philosophy during that exercise, especially culturally. So this session is, I'm not going to focus more on the life of Buddha, the events. Of course, I will bring out a few things about life of Buddha, but I'm going to focus on more on what Buddha taught. What Buddha taught. You will find that book later on as an additional reading, what Buddha taught. So that's what we are going to do. And then let's look at a few types of Buddhist monks. Now, there's a lot of Buddhist monks. So this would be a typical Buddhist monk you would find in Sri Lanka. So they have an umbrella-looking thing, which is made out of palmyra leaves. I don't know if you have seen when we are going out for special occasions. Preet, you have seen we take this fan, which is a evolved version of this original fan. It was used as an umbrella. It's made out of palmyra. So now monks symbolically take it when we go to a religious activity or religious event. And also the interesting thing is this bowl. It's called the Pindapata bowl or the Bhiksha bowl. We have those for each monk at this monastery up here. So when I was in the jungle, when I was in the cave monastery, I mean, it wasn't even a temple. There was only one statue of Buddha and that's it. And then the rock, there was no even bed or anything, just a cave. So there, I had to go out every day morning with this bowl. So I have to go through the jungle, off the fence, which is meant to keep away the elephants from going into the village. So I go to the village about 5-6 kilometers away. And then I would go to people's house, like different places, but I would not go inside. I would just stay by there without making a noise. If they notice me, they would come and drop something. But then where I lived, people were very poor. They were very remote, very poor. But anyone can spare a spoon of rice. Maybe you are not able to give a lunch or a dinner or like a bigger meal, but anyone can spare with a spoon of rice. So you meet 20 people, 20 kind people, you have 20 spoons of rice, which is good for a day. So that was the tradition. So the monks would carry this Pindapata bowl or the Bhiksha bowl, and usually with this fan. Now it's a fan, we don't carry it anymore. So this is what you would find in Theravada tradition mostly. And monks are also living with 4 things, a path of minimalism. We need food, Pindapata, so that's Pindapata. And then we need the second thing, Chivara, the robes, and a place to live, Senasana. It could be a house, it could be a palace, it could be a very humble place, it could be under a tree. I've lived under a tree in multiple locations, and it's really, it's way better than living inside a very fancy house because it's so much with the nature. So it could be any place, but a place which is suitable to live. And then you need the medicine, Besajja. We will find certain words, no need of taking those words down. So this community of Buddha's followers are called the Sangha. There's a word called Sangha. Sangha does not necessarily mean the monks who are wearing robes. It means anyone who's following the practice of Buddha. So it could be monks, nuns, ordained nuns. It could be lay people, male, female. It doesn't matter. Whoever who's following Buddha's path are called Sangha. So we find different types of Sangha monks. Now this would be a photo of the Thai tradition. There are many traditions in Thailand, so we find monks like this. We also find monks like this, who resembles more of East Asian monks, Chinese, Vietnamese, Japanese monks would dress a different robe. They would have a different robe. You would also find monks with hats. This is Dalai Lama's tradition called the Gelugpa tradition. They are also known as the yellow hat tradition. They live in Tibet. I was in Tibet. I was in Dharmasala. That's where the Tibetan monks exiled after they were sent from there to India. And they, to date, they wear these traditional ceremonial hats, and they have a different robe. You also find nuns who are having different costumes. So there's a few colors, but you would not find green robes, or you would not find ideally bluish robes or red robes. You would not find, but you would find more colors of tree barks or tree colors. I'll get to that, how the robe came to be at a later point. So now out of this, we also find different other traditions who are wearing all white. Can you recognize this symbol? Zen tradition, yeah, Zen monks. Now, which practice is the correct practice, right? We need to look into that. But in order to understand that question, we need to go back to do a little bit of geography and a history lesson. So this is a map of the world, part of the world. On this side, we find Afghanistan, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Iran, which was known as the Persian Empire up here. And then further up you go from the Persian Empire, you find the Roman Empire, Turkey, which is known as Istanbul, known as Constantinople, Turkey, and then the Roman Empire here. But I'm focusing more on the Asian side of things, the eastern side of things, the oriental side. So when first Buddha was born, he was known to be in this part of India, the northern central part of India. There's a lot of debate about the exact place, like any religious leader. This happened 2,500 years ago. The history is very tricky. It's a different narrative of based on different evidence, archaeological evidence. But Buddha has believed to be lived in this area. So one of the things happened during Buddha's time. Buddhism was not a very popular religion at the time of Buddha. Like Jesus, no one cared for Jesus at his lifetime. Even Pablo Picasso, no one cared for him. So pretty much all the good people, they were neglected during their lifetime, but they became venerated once they left their teaching. So there was a great influence on Buddhism by this emperor. Buddha was believed to have lived 500 to 400 BC before Christ. That's 2,500 years from now. But some people say that's 400 BC. That's when Buddha lived. So timings could be a little tricky. During the next 300 years, there was this big emperor called Ashoka Emperor. So Ashoka Emperor was a very important emperor in the Indian subcontinent because he unified the country. India is a really big country. Now, Canada is a very big country, but Canada doesn't have as much people. Now, I was in Chennai. The town of Chennai easily has 20 million people. So there's a lot of people. Wherever you look, there's a lot of people. So Ashoka Emperor's time, during 3rd BC, the first sort of denomination of Buddhism, more organized Buddhism, got spread under the Ashoka's patronage. That is the Theravada tradition of Buddhism. So that's why the monks who wear this type of robes, we are the first and we are the correct monks of who teaches Buddhism, Theravada tradition. So I belong to the Theravada tradition, but it's very interesting. Now this robe I wear, it was given to me by my teacher, Venerable Monragala Panjalankara. It was given to him by his teacher, Hadigalle Banagala Upatisatero. So we could trace back who was the teacher. So on you could go. And it's so wonderful to see, if you trace it back all the way, it would go to Buddha 2500 years ago. So it's called the Siuru Parampara, the generations of the robe. So it's a very interesting concept. If you can trace back, it would be Buddha 2500 years ago, and his first disciple, Kondanya. He's the first disciple, one of his friends. He was the first monk to be ordained. Buddha lived in a kingdom which was a very small kingdom compared to the bigger kingdoms. There were 18 big kingdoms at the time, 2500 years ago, called the Mahajanapada. Buddha was not in one of these big kingdoms, but he was a prince. His father was a ruler, not a big kingdom. But there were other Mahajanapadas like Kosala, Magadha, Vajji. And one of the first democratic states called Vajji, even before Athens coined the idea of democracy, there was this a small kingdom called Vajjiputta, Lichavis. They had the initial ideas of republic, democratic states. Very interesting, 2500 to 2800 years ago. Interesting history. And then after some time, the next big thing came when Buddhism started spreading this way. Now you would wonder, why did not Buddhism go to China right through this road? Why do you think? The mountains, Himalayan mountains. It's a really big mountain. In fact, the biggest mountain, and it's very cold there. Like Canada is cold, but Himalayan mountains are cold because there's a lot of wind there. And especially the houses around Himalayan mountains are not, warm and heated like this. So it's very cold. When it's minus 15 outside, it is minus 15 inside, not like in Canada. So Himalayan mountains was very, it's a big range spanning from all the way in Pakistan to this side. So the carriages who would go on trading, the carts, bullock carts, horse carts, they could not travel through this terrain. So they had to go through Pakistan, Afghanistan, Mongolia to China. So the Buddhism, when it went this way, so it could also go this way through the sea routes. But then there are also gatekeepers. For example, it went to Burma, Laos, Thailand, Cambodia, Sri Lanka. It was Theravada Buddhism. But from Vietnam onwards, you don't see Theravada Buddhism. You don't find Theravada Buddhism in Vietnam mostly, because you do. But mostly the Chinese, Korean, Japanese, Mahayana Buddhism is more prevalent in this area. It's like there's an invisible barrier. There's a nice barrier down here in Australia called the Wallace Line. I don't know if you have noticed, the animals in Australia and New Zealand are very different to the animals in the rest of the world, Asia. There are platypus, there's all weird looking animals. So there's an imaginary, an unseen line called the Wallace Line. Beyond that point, these animals are different. So the same way, beyond Laos, Burma, Thailand, Cambodia, Theravada Buddhism sort of stayed in this side of the world, whereas this side became Mahayana. And it's very interesting to see when you trace down the language of Buddhism. Theravada Buddhism is more associated with the language Pali, which we will be talking a lot. The Mahayana Buddhism is more associated with Sanskrit, Chinese, Tibetan, Japanese, Korean, etc. So when Buddhism went this way through the Silk Road, it was very interesting. It had its own additions, and the first and second century was very important. There were very nice philosophers like Nagarjuna, Dharmakirti, Asanga. So there were beautiful philosophers who contributed to the Mahayana school of thought of Buddhism, and it went this way. And then later on, it went in the 4th century to Korea during Qin dynasty in China, just before the Han dynasty. Buddhism became very popular even during Han dynasty. And during the Mongolian period, Buddhism again became very popular. It spread all the way to different parts. If you're not interested in history, don't worry. But it would be nice to see how Buddhism changed its shapes and how these different monks have different robes and different, almost different teachings. So That happened, and then it went to Japan, for example. Original word of Zen Buddhism is called Jan or Dhyan. Dhyan, when it went to Chinese part, it became Chan Buddhism. So there was a Chan Buddhism. Chan went to Japan, became Zen Buddhism. So there are different things which changes, and you can also look at the etymological change, the cultural change, how it got added, etc. And 7th and 8th century, Buddhism took a completely different form as Vajrayana Buddhism. Now, I will also talk about differences of these Buddhisms. So Vajrayana Buddhism is sort of the latest old edition, but now there's so many other types of Buddhism in the last century, like 20th and 21st century. Buddhism took more shapes and forms, like Shambhala Buddhism, New Age Buddhism, Dalit Buddhism of Dr. Ambedkar. So there's so many Neo-Buddhism movements, but these are the old historical Buddhist movements. And what happens is, have you heard of the Nile River, which is the longest river in the world? There are two Nile rivers, Blue Nile and the White Nile. They merge somewhere somewhere, I think in Egypt or somewhere. But Blue Nile River is blue in color. It has more bluish color there. The White Nile River is more white. Why I wanted to take that example is because water is colorless. But when it goes through a particular geography, a terrain, it takes the shape and form of that soil. So it can have a different shape and a form. So the same way, when Buddhism evolved, it took different shapes and forms of each cultural, philosophical, ideological, and geographical nuances. So the Buddhism in India, early Buddhism to later on Buddhism, has a lot of Hindu ideas. But then Hinduism is not one religion. Christianity, or let's say Judaism, is very easy. There's only few versions of Judaism. It's very clean. But Hinduism is not like that. There's so many different ideas, more than 1,000. I don't think anyone can ever finish learning all forms of Hindu Upanishad. There's so much. So a lot of Buddhist ideas were mixed with the Vedic ideas, the Hindu ideas, to a point where there's a lot of contradiction now, because they can be the same, they can be very different to the original interpretation also. So there's this great debate of whether there's a permanent soul, whether we have a spirit, soul, essence, chi, or whether there is no soul. So there's this great debate. We are going to look into that at the later parts, but not through academic exercises, through experiential exercises. Okay. So then when Buddhism came down towards Sri Lanka and to the Southeast Asian countries, it also got mixed with these things. Do you recognize who this is? Is it Buddha? He's almost Buddha looking. He appeared a little before Buddha. He's called the Jaina Mahavira, or Vardhamana Mahavira, or Tirthankara, or Jina. Did you remember the name Jina appeared earlier for Buddha? So this is Jain Mahavira. There's a group called Jainists, Jains. They identify themselves as, I have a very good friend. My friend is Nisha. Her name is Nisha Jain. So Jains usually have Jain as their last name, their surname. So wonderful group of people. But their forms of practice is a little hardcore. They are very vegan. They are super vegan. They're not even vegetarian or pescatarian. No, they're very vegan. Like their practices are very hard. The Jain monks, there's a form of Jain monks. They do not. One of the key concepts of Jainism is detachment. So they detach everything to the point those monks even don't wear a robe. They are called the naked ascetics. You find them. I've met quite a few in India this time as well. Because they are about complete detachment. They do not want to own anything, including clothes. So it's a little extreme practice, but a beautiful. There's a lot of philosophical overlaps between Jainism and Buddhism, but there's a lot of culture which got infused with the Buddhism and Jainism, because it was the same period. And the kings, like King Ashoka, he favored Jainism also as much as Buddhism. So there was a lot of overlapping with that. And then Buddhism, when it came to Sri Lanka, for example, and Southeast Asia, I don't know if you have noticed, we have a tree upstairs. It's called a Bodhi tree or a peepal tree. These countries were very animistic. Animistic. What is animism? Do you know what animism is? Most of the early religions in the world, prior to 5,000, 4,000 years, were very animistic. They worshipped the natural objects, natural phenomena. They worshipped, it wasn't a form of worshipping the way we worship now. It was being more grateful. I'm grateful for the water. I'm grateful for the sun. But then the later period, around 5,000 years, these natural phenomena, they became deities. So the natural phenomena of sun became a sun god. So it became gods, and it was very polytheistic, polytheism. There were multiple gods. So the natural phenomena that we were thankful to became gods. If you look at the First Nations beliefs, some of the beliefs of First Nation, you would find that grandma and grandpa, there are two rocks called grandma and grandpa, but it's not a personification or anthropomorphication of the phenomena. What's that fancy word? Anthropomorphication? Basically, when we look at something, we would like to attribute human qualities to that. For example, we would say, wow, look at the fox. He looks very cunning. The tiger looks very ferocious. And the rabbit is very innocent, like innocent children, innocent humans. So we like attributing our qualities to the phenomena we see. In Sri Lanka, when we look at the full moon, we see a rabbit. They say the British, when they look at the moon, they see queen. Right? So we like attaching things which are familiar to us, especially human qualities. If you look at all the car designs, you would find a face in that, in most of the cars. The Hummers, they look a little sturdy and more rough. And then there are cars which are more feminine. Right? So we like doing that anthropomorphication. So the animistic people were that, and Sri Lankan, Southeast Asian people were very animistic. So there was incorporation of special objects of veneration like the Bodhi tree appeared in those countries, but it was not a part of the Mahayana Buddhism which went up to China or Japan. The first thing, certain trees cannot be grown on that weather. So we don't find the Bodhi trees in Mahayana temples, but you would find that in Theravada temples a lot. So that was one addition. And then when it went to this side, it became super infused with the teachings of the Chinese period, especially. There was this beautiful period in China called the Zhou dynasty, and before the Han dynasty, a beautiful dynasty where a lot of important people who shaped the way of Chinese thinking came to be. Confucius, Lao Tzu. So these Tao teaching, Taoism, Taoistic teaching, Confucius teaching, and rituals, they got infused with Buddhism. So morality, rituals of Confucianism, and the concept of Taoism, you would find that they are all very infused. So it's very easy to misinterpret and say, well, this is Buddhism, and oh, this is Taoism. In fact, during the Mongolian period, there was a great debate organized by Kublai Khan. He got a group of Taoist monks and Buddhist monks, and then he asked to debate which one do you claim yours, to sort of separate the two. So there are talk like that. But these are the some of the main things happened, and let me quickly show you some of the main traditions which came out of that. Of course, the Theravada tradition is the second biggest tradition in terms of followers. It's about 200 to 400 million people who are following that, including people in Sri Lanka, Thailand, mainly Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Burma, etc. So you would find this word Theravada. This is in the Sinhala font, Theravada. This is in the Thai font, which I do not read. Some monks read Thai and Burmese. But Theravada also has a name called Hinayana. Hinayana. The literal meaning of Hina is small. Hina is small. Maha is big. Yana means a vehicle. So we were given the name smaller vehicle. Now, if we are the smaller vehicle, who are the bigger vehicle? So the bigger vehicle is called Mahayana. So if there's someone who could speak Hindi font, Devanagari font, which is the font of Sanskrit language, this is Ma-ha-ya-na, Mahayana. Helen, is this correct text? Are these correct characters in Chinese? Yeah? It says, what does it say? Big vehicle. Okay. So Mahayana. So Mahayana Buddhism is very different to Theravada Buddhism in many ways. Of course, they get remixed, at later points. But the Mahayana Buddhism, if you go to a Mahayana temple like the Wu Tai Shan temple in Peterborough, you would pretty much any temple, a Mahayana temple, instead of one Buddhist statue, you would find three Buddha statues. You would find the three Buddhas, the Siddhartha Gautama Buddha or the Sakyamuni Buddha, and then there's Avalokiteshvara and Besajja Buddha. Now, do you remember the word Besajja? I don't know if you have noticed, Pindapata, Chivara, Senasana, Pilanapacchaya or Besajja. Besajja means medicine. So there's a medicine Buddha in Mahayana Buddhism. And there's also the concept of Bodhisattva. I'll get to that later, who is a Bodhisattva and why is he different to Buddha. The main difference is that someone who's aspiring to become a Buddha, but he also is very different to most of the people. He's very compassionate, very kind, and going into extremes to help people. So that's Bodhisattva. You would find this great Bodhisattva called Avalokiteshvara or Guanyin. I'm sure I'm doing it wrong in Chinese, but Guanyin is what I can pronounce. Guanyin also has resemblance to some of the early Chinese gods like Nava. So there's a lot of resemblance there. And there's another character called Tara. Green Tara, red Tara, white Tara. That's a beautiful depiction, Tara. And there's Chintamani Tara and Kadiravani Tara, which also sometimes resembles Kali Amma. Have you heard of the deity Kali Amma? She's very South Indian and certain parts of Indian based. There was a matriarchic society back in the day in India, not a patriarchic society. So this matriarchic Kali Amma was a very influential figure for the people of that area. So you find that in the Buddhism. Amitabha Buddha, which means the light Buddha, the infinite light of Buddha, Amitabha, Sakyamuni Buddha, and then the Besajja Buddha, the medicine Buddha. So this is Mahayana Buddhism is one of the other major form. It's probably the biggest form because there's a lot of people in China. They were historically following the Mahayana Buddhism, which went through the Silk Route. So Theravada Buddhism, they say, is the oldest form, and Mahayana Buddhism is the most followed Buddhism. Then you find Vajrayana Buddhism. Now, if you go to a Tibetan monastery in certain parts of Tibet in northern India, you would find that Buddha is not the main highlight. It's him, Padmasambhava. This is not even Buddha. He's the one who introduced Buddhism to Tibetan, Bhutan, that plateau, northern part of Himalayan, very highlanders. So, Padmasambhava, also known as Guru Rinpoche. Have you heard the word Rinpoche? Yeah, sometimes it's told that way. So Padmasambhava is a important character there, Buddha, of course. But then when Buddhism went up that way, they absorbed a lot of other Indian philosophical schools of thought, like yoga. Now, the yoga you do here in the basement is it's actually a very wrong use of the word. That is not yoga. It's absolutely nowhere close to yoga. But there was a real yoga tradition in India. It is still there to date. I met some great Himalayan yogi masters. So yoga and now yoga comes from a very ancient practice called tantric practices, tantric practices, tantra. So tantric yogic practices got infused with Buddhism when it went to the highlands. So Tantrayana Buddhism or Vajrayana Buddhism is the third most famous type of Buddhism. There are very different schools of thought in Tantrayana. There are different other deities which came. For example, this is called Vajrapani. Vajrapani is another bodhisattva. Now, Guanyin is the most compassionate, nice lady, but Vajrapani is a very ferocious guy. He would hit you. He would, he would do things to protect the weak. So there are depictions of the bodhisattva in different cultures. And then you also find one of the most famous traditions of Buddhism. You identify Dalai Lama. He's one of the famous iconic Buddhist leaders. But he's not the main schools of Buddhist thought. It's actually a very school of Buddhist thought, which became famous because of the political situation when America got involved. Now, have you heard of Shakespeare? I've heard a joke. How come Shakespeare became one of the greatest poets in the world? Do you know why? Because the British colonized most of the world and there was English speaking. So Shakespeare became a great author because of that. If the world did not learn English, if they were speaking Latin or Spanish, Shakespeare wouldn't have been a great poet. Right? So the same way, there's a saying, history is written by the winners. So it happens in different schools of thought, ideologies, religions also. Um, so this is Dalai Lama is one of the most famous iconic figures in Buddhism. Um, he comes from this school of thought called Lama Tsongkhapa, which appeared in the 1300s after the Mongol period. Lama Tsongkhapa, Milarepa. So that's a Tibetan tradition of Buddhism. I personally find that that version of Buddhism is very mixed with Hinduism. So there are different nuances to that. But then you find more later on teachers like this, Thich Nhat Hanh, and I'm sure I'm doing it wrong. What's the correct way to say that? Okay, that's the correct way. What I did was wrong. I call him Thich Nhat Hanh, Thich Nhat Hanh. But I've been to his birthplace in Da Nang, Vietnam. Beautiful place. Was a very interesting monk. He did not necessarily call himself a Mahayana monk, although he was ordained under the Mahayana tradition. He had a beautiful teaching, which is not very Mahayana, but he became a very important teacher in the modern time. And this is a Burmese monk called Lady Sayadaw. Lady monk, Sayadaw means head monk. You probably have heard Maharshi Sayadaw or S.N. Goenka. Goenka sort of teachings, they come from Lady Sayadaw. He's a Burmese monk. He introduced the idea of vipassana into meditation a lot. So Lady Sayadaw lived quite a long time ago. And then there was also this very interesting monk in Thailand, Thai forest monastic order, Theravada monk called Ajahn Chah. Ajahn Sumedho, Ajahn Brahman. So very famous monks are from this school of thought called Ajahn Chah. And there's this Sri Lankan monk called Valpura Rahula. He wrote a great book called What Buddha Taught, which almost became a textbook to understand Theravada Buddhism, got translated into many languages, What Buddha Taught. It's a nice framework of what Theravada Buddhism is. This parable, this simile, is coming from a teaching in the Buddhist Pali Canon, which you find in that sitting room. There's a big set of group of books in red color that's called the Pali Canon. And there's a story called Nana Tirthankara Sutra. In that, there's a simile or a metaphor given. If a group of blind people are led to go and find out who an elephant is, what is an elephant like, they would go and touch different parts of the elephant, and they would tell, well, the elephant is like this. Elephant is rubbery, he has a horse-like a structure, or he has a tusk which is hard, or he has a broom or a brush-like thing. And there some would say he's like a tree where we can hug if you hold on to his legs. So people would describe the elephant in many different ways, who cannot see, who someone who's blind, but that is not the nature of the elephant. Now, why did I bring that out is because do you know the difference between dogmas and religions or philosophies? Dogmas. Have you heard the word dogma? Dogmatic. What is a dogma? Do you know what a dogma is? Dogmas are basically a set of beliefs that are given to us. We believe those axiomatically. We do not question them. In fact, if you question most of the dogmas, you go to hell, or you go to a bad place. You get punished for questioning dogmas. Dogmas are usually faith-based. There's a definitive teaching where you cannot, go away from that. These are very community-based, ritual-based ideas. There's a lot of protection. There's a lot of salvation ideas in that. It's a very, very therapeutic also for people. So those are dogmas. But philosophies are for people who are philosophers like Plato, Aristotle, Pyramides. They are just talking about ideas. They challenge ideas. They are sort of tend to be very rational in the nature. They are very open-minded. They are very thought-based. So Philosophies and dogmas are different. In fact, there's a person called Bertrand Russell. His book, the first chapter, he says the difference between a dogma and a philosophy. Philosophy, philosophies are a set of questions where people would not have a single answer. There's always debate. But dogmas is a single answer where you can't ask questions. So that's the difference between philosophies and dogmas. But what's the difference between religion and spirituality? Are they the same? There are a lot of overlaps. But religions tend to be more organized. There's a monastic order, there's a certain order into that, there's more order in religion. And religions are also very faith-based. There's a lot of traditions, there's collective worship, there's defined goals when you are religious. You need to go to heaven, you need to get out of, you need to stick to the 10 Commandments, you need to become enlightened. So there are strict rules about religion, worship, etc. But spirituality is more of an internal journey. It's about how do I found my inner peace? How do I focus on my inner transformation? What is my personal experience about things, not the collective group narrative about what life could be, what liberation could be. So it's more of a personal journey, and it also tends to be flexible. If there's something good in Judaism, I'm going to take that. If there's something good in Zen, I'm going to take that. So spirituality is somewhat more flexible that way. Religions, you cannot be a Christian Muslim. It's hard to be a Christian Muslim. It has to be separated. So you can't be a Theravada Mahayana monk. I've been often called, you have to pick one. You have to be the Theravada Mahayana. So that's there. But the course that we are going to do today is my teachings are not going to be very religious. This is meant for truth seekers. Right? I don't want to label you and ordain you as Theravada Buddhist monks from at the end of the 15th day, 12th day. So it's not based on that. And I also do not want to say things with a sort of authority, like a hegemony. Like, because I'm a monk, you should not take my words. That's not the approach of Buddhism. You should question me, right? During the Q&A time. That's why we have a Q&A time. It's not a mere belief system that we are following in Buddhism 101. And it's based on individual experience and individual insight, individual seeing. There's a beautiful word called Pacchatang Veditabbo Vinyuhiti in Pali language, which means you see and you understand. You don't take it because I tell you or a scripture tells you. You see it and then you figure it out. Pacchatang Veditabbo Vinyuhiti. So that's what we are going to do. There's no point of me telling you the taste of salt. You have to taste the salt, right? So the same applies to this approach. And the Buddhist approach, I will finish this today with this one last idea. So there was one day, this is a story, a parable which comes from the Pali Canon again. One day there was a rabbit. He was sleeping, and suddenly he heard a bang. He sprung out of his nest, and he thought the world is going to come to an end. He started running. So he kept on running, and then he met his other bunny friends, rabbit friends. They asked, "Why are you running?" He said, "The world is coming to an end. Let's run." So the bunnies are now, rabbits are running. The deers, they saw the rabbits running. So they asked, "Why are you running?" They said, "The world is coming to an end." So the deers joined the group now. And then the antelopes, the giraffes, all the animals in the whatever the jungle that time, they started running now. Now everyone is running. To a point, they approached a cliff, and all of them are now going to go off the cliff and die. So there was this very wise lion. He saw this big commotion. He came out and asked, "Stop, why are you running?" Then the giraffe said, "Well, the world is coming to an end." Then he asked, "How do you know?" Giraffe said, "Well, deer is my good friend. He told me the world is coming to an end, and that's why I'm running." He asked the deer. Deer said, "It was my rabbit friend." This rabbit friend said, "Well, he's my cousin. He's very good. He's the one who told that." So he figured the first rabbit, and he asked, "Why are you running?" He said, "Well, there was this huge bang. I thought the world is coming to an end, and then that's why I started running." Then the lion asked, "Did you verify that? Did you fact check it?" The rabbit said, "No." So he took the rabbit to where the sound occurred, and then they found out it was one of those palmyras leaves where the Buddhist monks were holding. A coconut has fallen on the palmyra leaf, and it made a big sound, and that's why the rabbits are running. So this is a classic story of Buddhism called Dadagga Sutra, Dadagga Jataka. The approach of Buddhism is not a faith-based path. We do not follow word of mouth testimony. That is not how we do Buddhism. Buddhism is based on experiential learning. We check facts. So that's the idea of Buddhism. With that, I will end the today's session. I was planning to cover a few more about why do we associate Buddhism. So let me take it up next day. And then you would see a few things, Pali Canon, and where to find Pali Canon. I'll do it next week. But then you will also find a few questions like this. So let me officially end the session here. And we have next week, March 30th, we are going to talk about what we couldn't do today and the nature of the mind during the next part. But I will officially end the session here. So these are some of the questions that you would find answers to or not find answers to during the next few sessions. For example, let me ask the question now. Session is officially over, so we can relax, and if you want to leave, you can leave on Zoom too. But some of the questions are, according to all what I said just now, what do you think? Is Buddha a god? Right? So I'm not answering, you're answering. Can Buddha bring material success to the world? Can you pray to Buddha and will he give material success to you? Can Buddha keep you away from malady, ailment? Can Buddhism teach me to find peace? Yeah. And is Buddhism all about meditation? Is Buddhism nihilistic? Do you know what nihilism is? Nihilism is that there are some people, they say, well, there's no meaning to this world. Everything is going to go. So it's bleak, it's dark. There's no point of living. Right? Nihilism. The world is suffering. Have you heard Buddhism is associated with the word suffering a lot, which is exactly what nihilism is. Everything is suffering. So that's nihilism. Buddhism is to escape reality. Is that a escaping mechanism? Do Buddhists believe in reincarnation? Now we need to look into that question. Does Buddhism reject the idea of a permanent soul? Right? Is there a heaven in Buddhism? Again, all these questions, depending on where you ask or whom you ask, you would find all answers. There's belief of reincarnation, there's disbelief of reincarnation. There are 33 heavens in Buddhism, if you ask. Some people say, well, that's not so important. Buddha has himself said, all these worlds are not so important, focus on your inner world. So there are different ideas about all this. And then, so we'll try to find ideas for those. So that's what we do today. And if you have any questions, you may send a mail to meditation@www.bmmc.ca. We usually have meditation here at 6:30 p.m. on all Thursdays usually. Yoga is there before meditation at 5:30. 5:30 to 6:30 is yoga. 6:45 to 7:45, 8ish is meditation. And then there's a lot of Q&A and talking and tea and coffee. And there's a meditation retreat coming up in April 18th to 20th, and every month long weekends. Yeah, that's about it. So like it was mentioned, we are a set of volunteers. So everything, all the teachings here are for free. It's a tradition of Buddhism that we do not charge for courses, because some people asked how much is it going to cost me. Teachings are absolutely for free, but if you want to help out with anything you see here, there's different bills mentioned up there. If you want to help with that, please do that voluntarily. But the tradition is that to help a person, we don't charge money. That's a beautiful tradition, like Ayurveda, Indian astrology. The starting sentence in all these books is that we should not do that to make money, not for a profit. So you keep the good intention that way. So that's there. So That's about it. So I'll end officially. Is it meeting your expectations? If it's not meeting your expectations, I have a session about disappointment. Okay, so we'll end our session there. All good on Zoom? All good, Shona? Yeah? All right, so let's put our hands together and let's say sadhu 3 times. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu.
May all be well. May your physical suffering be eased. May your mental suffering be eased, and may all find a way to figure out our mind and to find the liberation of our mind. Take care and good morning, and have a great week next week. Yeah, so we'll end the session here.